You will see more than 140 rare historical photos. Write in the comments which photos you like the most. In 1976, Texas oil heir Cullen Davis was acquitted of murdering his 12-year-old stepdaughter despite survivors identifying him. Later, the FBI recorded his approval of a judge's murder. Yet another jury acquitted him. Saddam Hussein kept exotic animals, including tigers, at his private palaces. After his fall, neglected lions were discovered starving inside a Baghdad palace zoo. On July 30, 1975, union boss Jimmy Hoffa vanished while waiting outside a Michigan restaurant. His body was never found, and nobody was ever charged. Kevin Strickland spent 43 years in prison for a triple murder he did not commit. Missouri released him in 2021, but paid him nothing because his case lacked DNA evidence. This 1924 photo shows Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey performers once advertised as human oddities. Some American cities also enforced ugly laws that barred visibly disabled people from public spaces. This Russian Orthodox priest wears deerskin clothing and carries a rifle in the Far East around 1900. Rows of dried fish behind him reveal how people survived the brutal northern climate. Linda Thompson was an American lawyer who compiled a controversial list of Clinton critics who died in unusual circumstances. In 2009, she died from an overdose after Veterans Affairs reportedly sent her the wrong medication. A Lancaster bomber crosses flares and explosions over Hamburg in 1943. The Allied raids, called Operation Gomorrah, created a massive firestorm that killed tens of thousands of people. 300 meters inside a giant sinkhole in Hubei, China, explorers found a hidden forest with towering ancient trees. These heavenly pits form when acidic rainwater dissolves rock until the ground suddenly collapses. In July 1956, the Andrea Doria sank after colliding with the Stockholm near Nantucket. Despite a deadly list trapping half its lifeboats, nearby ships rescued more than 1,600 people. In 1987, 15-year-old Jennifer Pandos vanished, leaving a note warning her parents not to call police. They waited 3 days, and her brother later suspected they knew more than they admitted. In 1980, a Quebec CL-215 flew dangerously low over Chicoutimi to attack a mall fire. The amphibious aircraft released nearly 6,000 liters in seconds. Harlem, New York, in the 1970s, when vacant lots became illegal dumping grounds. Residents lived beside mountains of trash as the city faced bankruptcy, arson, and collapsing public services. On July 30, 1945, the Indianapolis sank in just 12 minutes after a Japanese submarine attack. Nobody noticed she was missing for 4 days, and 879 men died from explosions, exposure, dehydration, and shark attacks. James Cameron sits calmly inside a flooded Titanic set in 1997. Many of the sinking scenes had only one take because the rushing water destroyed the set. This is 19-year-old Lloyd Leo Anderson arriving on Missouri death row in 1962 after murdering 15-year-old Thomas Group during a robbery. In 1965, Anderson became the last person Missouri executed in its gas chamber. In 1949, nearly 80-year-old Henri Matisse drew chapel designs from bed using charcoal tied to a long bamboo pole. His hotel room matched the chapel's scale, letting him plan the walls without standing. Zambian President Kenneth Kaunda dances with Princess Mary at the Independence Ball on October 25, 1964. Zambia had gained independence from British rule just 1 day earlier. In the 1950s, police patrolled New York's Holland and Lincoln tunnels in tiny electric catwalk cars. These narrow vehicles traveled beside traffic, letting officers reach crashes and stalled cars fast. In 1914, a French civilian pours a drink for a soldier heading into the First World War. Jacques Moreau captured this rare moment before years of brutal trench warfare changed France forever. Jean Piaget sits buried in books inside his home office in 1979. His research revealed that children do not think like small adults, but build knowledge through experience. John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd shared this tiny New York apartment while creating Saturday Night Live in the mid-1970s. Their late-night obsession with blues soon produced the Blues Brothers. French Curtiss fighters fly over Belgium in 1940. Aircraft number 99 was shot down near Antwerp after pilot Charles-Fernand Lacroix destroyed a German bomber, earning him a posthumous Croix de Guerre. In 1993, members of the Children of God cult protested outside the Argentine embassy in Manila. They demanded the return of children taken during police raids on the group in Argentina. Japan displayed this captured Russian submarine at Yasukuni Shrine in 1906. Built by a bicycle designer, it carried 4 mines but never sailed because its salvaged motor was too weak. In 1981, Luis Pai Hoyos secretly slept atop the Great Pyramid. At sunrise, he found Adidas sneakers beside his face, belonging to a guide escorting tourists to the summit. In 1981, Luis C. Hoyos slept atop the Great Pyramid and woke beside Adidas sneakers. They belonged to a guide escorting tourists to the summit. Sadie Anderson Carno was born with piebaldism and formed an acrobatic troupe with 2 sisters. She later toured European circuses with her sword-swallowing husband and performed until 1956. Soviet leaders carry Felix Dzerzhinsky's coffin through Moscow in July 1926. Among them are Trotsky and Stalin, future enemies united behind the founder of the feared Cheka secret police. Princess Diana looked close to tears during a Sydney crowd event on March 28, 1983. Photographer Ken Lennox captured the tense moment during her first royal tour with Prince Charles. In 1927, Belgian communist youth visited the basement where the Romanov family was executed. They posed beside the bullet-scarred wall, just 1 year before Soviet authorities demolished the room. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel signs Germany's surrender in Berlin on May 8, 1945. Convicted of war crimes, he admitted he would have accepted glory for victory and refused to blame ordinary soldiers. Harry Langdon poses with Marie Windsor at Hal Roach Studios during the All-American Coed in 1941. Windsor later became one of film noir's most memorable femme fatale. Lon Chaney used his personal makeup kit to create the Phantom of the Opera in 1925. His shocking skull-like face was made without modern prosthetics. American paratroopers filled the sky over southern France during Operation Dragoon on August 15, 1944. Many landed miles off target, yet they still captured key roads and blocked German reinforcements. At this outdoor Tupperware party in 1955, women passed plastic containers around before deciding what to buy. Hosts enforced a strict dress code. Skirts and stockings were mandatory. The Old Gentleman is the world's oldest surviving diving suit, made in Finland in the early 18th century. Its leather seams were sealed with pitch, tar, and animal fat. This Ardennes draft horse uses its immense strength to drag heavy logs through a forest. The largest recorded horse, Samson, stood 2.19 meters tall and weighed an estimated 1,524 kilograms. In 1944, Jewish partisan Faye Schulman posed near Pinsk while secretly documenting resistance against the Nazis. She developed over 100 photographs under blankets, preserving rare proof that Jewish fighters fought back. In 1944, Frida Kahlo posed beside one of her beloved Mexican hairless dogs. A devastating bus crash left her in lifelong pain and inspired many of her haunting self-portraits. After a German rocket attack on London in 1945, a rescue worker found a kitten alive in the rubble. He stopped amid the destruction to comfort it. British police recorded far more than faces in the 1920s and 30s. John Gallagher's file lists a missing left eye and identifies him as a pub burglar who also stole from cars. A German soldier raises his hands to surrender to an American carrying a Browning automatic rifle. Bullet holes surrounding the window reveal how close he came to being killed. Newspaper boys take a smoke break outside a St. Louis shop in the 1910s. Many newsboys were children who worked long hours selling papers for only a few cents. This giant sequoia slice is 16 feet wide and weighs 19 tons. It has stood in New York's American Museum of Natural History for over 70 years. In 1953, a West Berlin police officer stops a lone car arriving from East Berlin near the Brandenburg Gate. Spike strips block the road, revealing how quickly one city had become two hostile worlds. In 1977, Mad Max cinematographer David Egby filmed high-speed action from the back of a speeding motorcycle. With no safety rig, he carried the heavy camera on his shoulder while a stunt rider chased the shot. Founded in Paris in 1892, the Cabaret of Hell welcomed guests through a giant demon's mouth. Inside, waiters dressed as devils served strange drinks among flames, coffins, and mock torture scenes. On May 2, 1945, Soviet soldiers raised the red flag over Berlin's Reichstag. Photographer Yevgeny Kalday staged this famous scene, then removed a second wristwatch from one soldier's arm before publication. In 1957, British authorities hanged Kenyan resistance leader Dedan Kimathi after capturing him wounded. His secret grave remains undiscovered, while his Mau Mau fighters helped force Britain to surrender colonial rule. Robert Wadlow, the tallest man ever recorded at 8 feet 11 inches, stands aboard the Queen Mary in 1937. He was only 19 years old. A century ago, horse-drawn snow rollers packed fresh snow instead of clearing it. The hard, smooth surface let sleighs travel where wheeled vehicles could not. In December 1943, Soviet sappers cut German barbed wire near Zhytomyr as mortar shells exploded nearby. Their deadly work opened a path through the fortified position. In 1963, France launched a stray cat named Félicette into space with electrodes implanted in her brain. She returned alive and remains the only cat ever sent into space. This photograph captures Mount Vesuvius during its last eruption in March 1944. Lava destroyed several villages, while hot ash damaged dozens of Allied bombers parked nearby. On June 16, 1963, Valentina Tereshkova became the first woman in space aboard Vostok 6. This image captured her during her fifth orbit around Earth. On April 14, 1935, a massive dust storm swallowed Tyrone, Oklahoma, in minutes. The disaster became known as Black Sunday and forced thousands of families to abandon the Great Plains. The Soviet Lun-class Ekranoplan skimmed just above the sea at over 500 kilometers per hour, carrying 6 giant missiles. Built in 1987, this terrifying machine was abandoned after the Soviet Union collapsed. A furious mob destroyed the Indonesian Communist Party headquarters in Jakarta after 6 army generals were kidnapped and killed. This photograph was taken on October 8, 1965, during the deadly aftermath of the failed September 30th movement. On April 23, 1971, a Vietnam veteran threw his war medals toward the Capitol in protest. Hundreds of veterans joined him, rejecting the honors they had earned in a war they now opposed. The MV New Carissa ran aground on the Oregon coast on February 4, 1999. 8 days later, its spilled oil washed onto the North Spit as the broken freighter remained offshore. In 1920, workers built this massive steel spiral casing for a 70,000 horsepower Niagara Falls turbine. Its curved shell guided enormous water pressure into the turbine, turning the force of the falls into electricity. In 1889, workers began building the Margarita Hut on Monte Rosa at 4,554 meters. Every beam and stone had to be carried across deadly glaciers to Europe's highest construction site. A gas balloon rises from the Bremen Gas Works sometime between 1918 and 1945. A large crowd watches as its small basket leaves the ground. The bankruptcy barrel became a symbol of total financial ruin in the 19th century. During the American Civil War, Union soldiers reportedly forced captured Confederates to wear barrels like this as public humiliation. German soldiers test a flamethrower on April 4, 1917, as fire erupts from a trench. Its pressurized fuel made the operator a deadly weapon and an obvious target. This 1908 X-ray compares a woman wearing a corset with the same torso unrestricted. The corset sharply narrows the waist and forces the lower ribs inward. French troops pose with their battle-torn regimental flag in 1917. The flag's shredded fabric shows the brutal damage their unit survived during the First World War. 17-year-old Jonathan Jackson took Judge Harold Haley hostage at the Marin County Courthouse on August 7, 1970. He demanded freedom for the Soledad brothers, including his brother George, but both Jackson and Haley were killed. A Chinese banker stole millions from his own workplace to buy lottery tickets, hoping one jackpot would hide the crime. He kept losing, built a $7 million debt, and ended up behind bars. Carrie Nation became famous for smashing illegal saloons with a hatchet during the temperance movement. She was arrested more than 30 times, but sold souvenir hatchets to pay her fines. In 1915, Italian Alpini climbed sheer cliffs to attack Austro-Hungarian positions high in the Alps. These soldiers hauled rifles and supplies by rope, turning near vertical rock into a battlefield. Japanese students practiced mathematics on soroban abacuses in 1920. This training taught them to calculate quickly by moving beads, long before electronic calculators entered classrooms. In 1978, a bomb hidden in a bin exploded outside Sydney's Hilton Hotel during a major summit. It killed 3 people and became Australia's first deadly terrorist bombing. In 1910, a rebel faced a firing squad during the opening stage of the Mexican Revolution. Many prisoners were executed without a fair trial as rival armies fought for control of Mexico. In 1919, Ty Cobb shook hands with Alex Rivers, a black assistant at Detroit's Navin Field. Despite his racist reputation, Cobb later publicly supported integrating Major League Baseball and praised black players. This FBI display shows weapons seized from the Dillinger Gang. At the lower left is a Colt pistol modified with a Thompson grip, extended magazine, and fully automatic fire. Emperor Hirohito visits devastated Yokohama in 1946 on his first tour after Japan's surrender. The public now stood unusually close to a ruler once treated as divine. In 1938, 20-year-old Robert Wadlow stood nearly 8 feet 7 inches tall beside his father. He kept growing and reached 8 feet 11 inches, becoming the tallest verified person in history. In 1931, a young man crossed flooded Hankou on a makeshift raft outside City Hall. The Yangtze floods lasted 5 months and killed hundreds of thousands, possibly millions. United States Marines returned fire from behind a wall during the Battle of Hue in 1968. One Marine fires an M60 machine gun, while another uses a field telephone to coordinate the fight. British forces erected this sign at Bergen-Belsen on May 29, 1945. It reported 10,000 unburied bodies and 13,000 more prisoners who died after liberation. On November 5, 1900, chorus girls from London's Prince of Wales Theatre stocked up on enormous fireworks before their evening show. Britain marked Bonfire Night with explosions, bonfires, and burning Guy Fawkes figures. 18-year-old waitress Bonnie Parker stands behind the counter at Marco's Cafe in East Dallas in 1928. 2 years later, she met Clyde Barrow and became half of America's most infamous outlaw couple. This Royal Aircraft Factory BE-2 trainer crashed into telegraph wires near Cranwell, Lincolnshire. The cables trapped it almost vertically, leaving the fragile aircraft hanging nose down above the ground. Naples, Italy, 1908. A street vendor serves spaghetti to hungry customers. For centuries, pasta was common street food in Naples, and people traditionally ate the long strands with their bare hands. A Soviet Mi-24 unleashes rockets on Mujahideen positions in Afghanistan. Nicknamed the Flying Tank, it combined heavy firepower with space for 8 soldiers. At Camp Number 322 near Dijon, women pack 416 loaves into sacks during the First World War. Each heavy bag was marked for the United States Army, turning a French bakery into a military supply line. Sergeant Geisler flashes his heavily tattooed arm before a haircut at a military barbershop. Even the barber pauses to inspect the artwork before covering it with the cape. In November 1966, Florence suffered its worst flood in centuries. Mud and oil buried cars, homes, and priceless Renaissance art across the city. A Japanese doctor checks a woman's pulse in the 1890s. Pulse diagnosis was a key part of Campo medicine, used to judge illness before modern tests existed. Arnold Schwarzenegger recovered from knee surgery just months before the 1972 Mr. Olympia. He still won the contest, securing his third straight title. In 1930, fishermen reportedly caught this enormous pike in Russia's Lake Ilmen. The shocking photograph still circulates today, but the fish's true size was never officially verified. Hungarian rebels burn a portrait of Stalin during the 1956 uprising. Days later, Soviet tanks entered Budapest and crushed the revolt. This is the last known photograph of Mikhail Bulgakov, taken in Moscow in 1939. Blind and burning with fever, he still dictated final changes to the Master and Margarita to his wife. Allied bombing in February 1945 destroyed Dresden and killed about 25,000 people, mostly civilians. Martin Luther's statue remained standing before the shattered Frauenkirche, surrounded by mountains of rubble. Moscow, 1993. A schoolboy carries a Soviet flag toward riot police. He was protesting the breakup of a country that had vanished 2 years earlier. In 1973, Elvis Presley gave Muhammad Ali a jeweled robe labeled People's Choice. Ali returned the favor with boxing gloves inscribed, "You're the greatest." Pretty Boy Floyd was a notorious bank robber who became public enemy number 1 in 1934. He was also accused of the Kansas City Massacre, but denied taking part. In 1941, American actress Anne Sheridan signed autographs for British sailors visiting the United States. She was one of Hollywood's most popular wartime pinup stars. The fourth French Aerotran prototype rides on an air cushion during testing near Orleans in 1970. This futuristic vehicle was designed to reach 250 kilometers per hour. At 19, Walt Disney joined the Kansas City Film Ad Company in 1920. There, he learned cutout animation and made advertising films, launching the skills that would build his entertainment empire. Martin Scorsese tests temporary tattoos on Robert De Niro for Cape Fear in 1991. Nearly every tattoo was fake, designed to turn Max Cady's body into a warning. This 1850 photograph shows the buried head of a colossal Rameses, the second statue at Abu Simbel. The tiny man sitting above reveals its astonishing scale. On March 7, 1947, a camera aboard a captured German Phi-2 photographed Earth from 162 kilometers up. It captured Earth's curvature from beyond 100 miles, 10 years before Sputnik. 5 German seaplanes attacked the British submarine C-25 near Harwich in 1918. The photograph was taken from one of the attacking aircraft. Residents crowd a van during a free bread sampling in Chelyabinsk in 1996. The frantic scene reveals how severe food shortages and poverty remained for many Russians after the Soviet collapse. In August 1961, East German forces ripped up Berlin's streets and sealed the border almost overnight. Barbed wire came first, while concrete blocks soon turned the temporary barrier into the Berlin Wall. Robert Scott and his team reached the South Pole on January 17, 1912, only to find that Roald Amundsen had arrived first. All 5 men died during the brutal return journey. 2 women smile at a Royal Canadian Navy firefighting school in 1944. Their heavy protective suits helped them train to face intense heat, toxic smoke, and deadly fires aboard wartime ships. The Great Panjandrum was a rocket-powered explosive wheel designed to smash through German beach defenses. Tests failed because its rockets broke loose, sending the machine wildly off course. German Red Cross nurses treat a wounded soldier during the First World War. Before antibiotics, even a small infected wound could become deadlier than the original injury. This Soviet death notice reached a soldier's family in February 1945. It recorded that he died from his wounds and revealed the exact location of his grave. Nippers were children as young as 9 who opened heavy ventilation doors for horses and coal carts. In dark mine tunnels, they risked being crushed by doors, trampled by horses, or struck by carts. A Japanese soldier walks out unarmed and nearly naked to surrender to American troops. His unit had survived hidden among the ruins, but hunger and defeat finally forced them out. A homeless girl holds her rabbit on a London doorstep in 1890. For many poor children, a pet was their only comfort in a city with no safety net. George W. Bush plays rugby for Yale in 1966. The future president appears to grab an opponent below the belt during the brutal tackle. Around 1875, John Thomas photographed Mr. Owen, the town bell ringer of Llangollen, Wales. Before phones and radio, his bells warned residents of fires, announced deaths, and marked major events. During the Great Depression, desperate men crowded an employment office, competing for scarce jobs. By 1933, nearly 13 million Americans were unemployed. Around 1900, Coca-Cola deliveries in Jackson, Mississippi still traveled by horse-drawn wagon. The photograph captures the brand's early expansion before motor trucks transformed American delivery routes. Helen Pekar, a 40-inch tall singer and comedian with bright red hair, began performing in the 1930s. This striking photograph shows her posing on a piano during her nightclub career. James Dean stands outside his childhood home in Fairmount, Indiana, in the early 1940s. He moved there at age 9 after his mother died and was raised by his aunt and uncle. This 1944 photo shows photographer Robert Capa, soldier Olin Tompkins, and writer Ernest Hemingway in France. Capa later died on a landmine, while Hemingway took his own life. A policeman stops traffic as pigs cross Camden Road in London on March 28, 1931. Before livestock trucks became common, animals were often driven through busy city streets on foot. Miklos Horthy entered Budapest on a white horse in November 1919 after the communist regime collapsed. His arrival marked the rise of a new authoritarian order and years of violent anti-communist reprisals. Marines of the 3rd Battalion, 26th Marines shelter inside a sandbag bunker at Khe Sanh in March 1968. North Vietnamese artillery pounded the isolated base during a siege lasting 77 days. Terry Fox would have turned 68 today. In 1980, he ran 5,383 kilometers across Canada on one artificial leg before cancer reached his lungs. French farmers calmly gather hay beside a shattered German Junkers Ju-88 near Matrany, Normandy. The bizarre scene was photographed on July 17, 1944, just weeks after the Allied landings. During the Great Depression, a mother and her 2 barefoot children stand beside their patched wooden home. Their worn clothes and makeshift repairs reveal how poverty shaped daily life for millions of American families. This is Billy the Kid, photographed around 1880 in the only widely authenticated portrait of him. He was just 21 when Sheriff Pat Garrett shot him dead. This is Hamida Jandoubi, the last person executed by guillotine in France. His death in 1977 ended nearly 2 centuries of guillotine executions. In 1964, Randy Gardner stayed awake for 264 hours, setting a world record at just 17. He repeatedly identified these objects to prove he was still lucid, as sleep deprivation damaged his memory, speech, and senses. Women mourn Togo's President Sylvanus Olympio after soldiers killed him outside the United States Embassy in 1963. His assassination marked the first military coup in a newly independent African nation. In 1907, an African-American crew tightened massive bolts inside the West River Tunnel. Working in mud and cramped darkness, these men helped build the rail link beneath the river. This British soldier was photographed eating from a mess tin inside a muddy trench during World War I. Even a simple meal had to be eaten beside rats, flooded walls, and constant enemy fire. Nikola Tesla examines his induction motors in 1898. His rotating magnetic field made efficient alternating current machines possible and helped power modern industry. In 1990, shoppers in Vilnius crowded nearly empty stores during severe Soviet shortages. Lithuania had declared independence, but Moscow's economic blockade made food and basic goods even harder to find. In 1942, Yakov Pavlov's small Soviet unit defended this Stalingrad building for nearly 2 months. General Vasily Chuikov claimed Germany lost more men here than taking Paris. In 1920, a World War I amputee tested a prosthetic arm built for welding. The tool let him hold the torch and work with remarkable precision. This photo allegedly shows Jean-Paul Sartre listening to Hitler in Berlin in 1934, but the man's identity remains unverified. Sartre did study in Nazi Germany then, focusing on philosophy while largely ignoring its political upheaval. In 1918, artists made custom facial prosthetics for soldiers whose faces were shattered in war. Thin metal masks were painted to match their skin, hiding injuries that surgery could not repair. This is one of Titanic's boat deck davits before the disaster. Each could handle several lifeboats, but Titanic carried far fewer boats than the system could launch. Italian anti-aircraft fire destroyed this British Bristol Blenheim during the East African Campaign. The wreck shows how quickly an aircraft could be torn apart after being hit in 1940. A German air raid devastated London's Docklands on September 17, 1940. The docks were a vital supply hub, so destroying them could starve Britain and cripple its war effort. Firefighters battled the Equitable Building blaze in Manhattan in 1912. Their water froze instantly, covering the landmark built in 1870 with enormous icicles before it was demolished. This was not an invasion, but a load test of Prague's Nusal Bridge. In 1970, 66 T-55 tanks rolled onto it to prove the structure could withstand extreme weight. Tokyo burned after 300 B-29 bombers attacked on March 10, 1945. The firestorm killed about 100,000 people in a single night, making it history's deadliest air raid. Dorothea Lange photographed this Japanese-American mother and her children in 1942 for the War Relocation Authority. Soon, the United States imprisoned more than 110,000 people of Japanese ancestry, most of them American citizens. On July 20, 1969, Neil Armstrong climbed down the Eagle's ladder while Buzz Aldrin filmed from inside. Minutes later, Armstrong became the first person to step onto the moon. This is one of only 2 confirmed photos of Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg. The camera caught him 3 hours before he delivered the Gettysburg Address on November 19, 1863. Thousands of San Quentin inmates sit shoulder to shoulder during a prison concert. Johnny Cash later made this prison famous with his legendary live performance in 1969. In 1952, American-built F-84 Thunderjets were towed through Copenhagen from the harbor to the airport. Denmark's new jet fighters rolled past cyclists, trams, and stunned crowds. A cat called Unsinkable Sam reportedly survived the sinking of 3 warships during the Second World War. After Bismarck, Cossack, and Ark Royal went down, he retired on land and lived until 1955. Naomi Campbell in 1989, surrounded by photographers at just 19 years old. By then, she had already become the first black model on the cover of French Vogue. Titanic takes shape at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast in the early 1910s. Around 3,000 workers built the giant liner, but 8 died during construction. Zookeeper John Wilkie shares a smoke break with a monkey in December 1928. Beside it sits a toy companion, also posed with a cigarette. Italy secretly dropped mustard gas on Ethiopian soldiers and civilians during the war from 1935 to 1937. The government denied it for decades before finally admitting the truth in 1996. This wreckage followed the Great Railroad Strike of 1877 after militia gunfire killed 20 people in Pittsburgh. Rioters destroyed 100 locomotives, 1,000 railcars, and 39 railroad buildings. Rotterdam, after the German bombing in 1940, photographed after the rubble was cleared. The attack killed around 900 people, destroyed the city center, and helped force the Netherlands to surrender. Pawnee women dry an animal hide beside their lodges in 1886. Preparing hides was skilled work that turned hunted animals into clothing, shelter, and trade goods. At only 9 months old, Annie Jones was exhibited as a bearded baby for $150 a week. By adulthood, her hair measured nearly 2 meters, and she became one of the era's most famous performers. The Karaks are one of Russia's smallest indigenous peoples, traditionally living along the Bering Sea. In the 2010 census, only 4 people identified as Karak. In Venice in 1915, Italian soldiers aimed their rifles skyward from a rooftop platform. Massed rifle fire was an early defense against enemy aircraft. In 1960, Koki Naya celebrated with the Emperor's Cup after winning his first top division sumo championship. Born Ivan Barishko, he later became Taiho, one of Japan's greatest yokozuna. Write in the comments which photos you liked the most.